Welcome to CMS Training with EDUCO. In this video, we'll be showing you how to use the WYSIWYG, or What You See Is What You Get editor, to create and manage content on your Drupal site. So first we're going to click the Edit tab on our home page. And our overlay is going to open up to edit this basic page of home. And we're going to be focusing on the body area that has the WYSIWYG editor. So you can see a couple rows of icons. This particular editor is the CK editor. You might have a different type of editor installed on your site, but for the most part, a lot of these icons are very similar or the same, and the processes that you use to change your content is very similar. So whenever you mouse over any of the icons, you'll get a tooltip that lets you know what that icon is for. You've got some tried and true sort of functions such as bold, italicize, underline, and strike through. And you'll notice that as these styles are applied, the icon that corresponds to the particular style stays blue. And if we want to remove that style, we just check that icon again, and it goes away. Next, we have our alignment. By default, your text is aligned to the left. Next, we have our center, our right align, and our justify. As a note, justify does not work as well on the internet as it does in Microsoft Word or a text editor, so I would recommend avoiding it. For the most part, you're going to want to leave your content left aligned. Sometimes it's tempting to center a bunch of things, and while that's useful in certain cases, it does make content a little bit difficult to read. It's easier and more usable for web content to be read when it's left aligned. Next, you have your bulleted list and your numbered list. You will always want to, when you're creating lists of content, you want to use these two items for multiple reasons. One, the bullets will be uniform. The style and the indenting of those lists will be uniform throughout your whole site. And two, search engines will recognize that ordered content and view it slightly differently than paragraph content or header content. It has a different connotation when it comes to search engines, so you want to make sure that you use the proper styling so that they search engines and screen readers have a better understanding of the display of the content. So if we wanted to turn this first paragraph into a list, we could highlight it all, and then we'll just use our insert remove bulleted list icon. And now the whole thing is turned into one bullet. If we wanted to break it up into separate items in the list, we could just hit return wherever we wanted a new item to appear, and that item automatically gets a bullet added to it. If we wanted to change this entire list to be a numbered list, we could just highlight it all and select the numbered list. If we wanted, if a particular element of content had a sublist, so if, say for instance, number 2 had some sub items, we just put our cursor in front of the item below it, and then we would just use our increase indent. It's a couple of icons over, and you could, do the same in an unordered list, and that allows you to create additional sublists. If you have done that in error, you can decrease the indent and scooch it back out. Next, since we've already covered the decrease and increase indent, you would primarily only use those in reference to bulleted lists. It's not really typically best practices to to indent your content as if it were a regular paragraph. If you were using this for a block quote or to denote a large area of quoted text, you would want to use the block quote command instead. But you could also use it to indent and outdent text. Next, we have our undo function. This will allow you to undo all of the commands that you've gone through since the time that you've opened this particular window. So you can go kind of all the way back, I want to say up to maybe 20 steps, but you can go pretty far back into the movements that you've made throughout the WYSIWYG editor. You can also redo and try to get yourself back to where you started undoing the particular items that you've done. The next item that we have is very important to a website, and that's how you create links. It's this little world with a chain link in front of it. So we'll pick a random piece of content, and say for instance we wanted to take this word and create a link with it. So you would just highlight the word that you wanted to be the link, and then you would click the link icon. So you get this dialog box that opens up on top of your overlay, and it's got a couple of tabs. It's got link info, target, and advanced. You don't necessarily need to be messing around with Target in advance, but we'll go over a couple of items that you might be interested in those particular tabs. The most important part of the link dialog box is the link info tab. So first we have link type, and if you drop that down, you'll see that your types are URL, link to anchor in text, and email. The typical type of link that you're going to be creating is a URL link. That's basically below you have your protocol. That's the HTTP : that starts off your hypertext protocol that starts off your link. If you drop that down, you can see you've got some other options. You have HTTPS, that's to link to a secure link. You have FTP and news, which are very rarely used. And then you have this other option. So if we were going to create an external link to, say, for instance, Google, then we would use the HTTP protocol, and then we would put in, google.com as our link. And that would create an external link to Google. If we were going to create an internal link to another page on our site, we would actually use the other as our protocol. And then we would just put in the alias to that page. So in this case, the only page that we've created right now with an alias is the home page. So if we were creating a link to the home page, we would use the other protocol, and then the URL for that page would be home, the alias of the page. That's why it's very important too, if you change a page's alias, to keep in mind that it might be linked on other pages that are tied to that alias, and then you'd have to go through and edit those things. The other link types we have are link to anchor in text. Presently, there are no anchors in the text. We'll come back to this once we've showed you how to create them, but that basically creates a link that will bounce you around this particular page. Then the last link type we have is email. It's very self-explanatory. You can create a link that basically opens up the email dialog box. It'll open up whatever the person viewing their default email browser. You can type in the email address that's required. So that would be, if I wanted someone to send an email to support at EDUCO web design, I would put that in the email address. You can also add the message subject and message body. So if you want a particular subject to kind of let you know which page they're contacting you from, you can put that information in the subject. If you'd like to create a sentence that they could potentially start their email with, you can put that in the message body. We're going to switch back to link type of URL, since that's the most common link that you'll be using. And then finally, in this link info tab, you see a button to browse server. And this is useful for if you're going to link to a PDF and you need to either it's already been uploaded to your server and you need to link to a PDF that already exists up there, or you need to upload a PDF to your server. So if we hit Browse Server, I'm going to bring this over. We're going to get a window that pops up that is going to open up your file browser, and that's going to show you any files that have already been uploaded to your site. We haven't uploaded any files yet, so it's empty, but if we were to use the Upload tab here, and this is the IMCE uploader, your file browser might be slightly different, but we would hit Upload, and then we could browse our computer and find a file to upload. In this case, I just have this image that I keep using over and over again for tutorials, so I'm going to go ahead and upload that. And, it'll pinwheel for a second while it's uploading. Then it will let you know that the upload has been completed. It will add the item to your file list. And since it's the only item in the list, it's selected right now. And then below that, you get a little preview of the particular item. You could upload a PDF here, and you wouldn't necessarily get a preview like you would an image, but you would get the name of the PDF in your list. And if you had your item selected, then you could click the Insert File. And now our protocol would link directly to the address of that picture that we've just uploaded. If you wanted to delete something that had already been uploaded to your server, you could use the browse server to do so as well. So if we wanted to link to that picture, we've got that URL in there. Now under the Target tab, by default, when you click a link, when you create a link that is then clicked on your site, the window that opens up to house that link is going to open up over the top of your site. If you want this link to open up in a new window, you can use the new window or blank target, and that will force it to open up in a new window. There are a couple of different items. You have a pop-up window. There's topmost window, which would open it on top of this present window. Same window, which is the same as not setting it. It's the default. It's opening on in itself. and parent window, that is only applicable if you're using Frame. So by default, you can either leave it not set, or if you want it to open in a new window, you can set it to new window _ blank. And then under advanced, there are a lot of fields that you don't need to worry about. The only one that is interesting to you is the advisory title. And this is for search engine optimization purposes. It's not required, but it is helpful to add an advisory title to any link that you create to let search engines know what this particular link does. So if I were creating a link to a travel picture, I might say travel picture. Usually your advisory title should reinforce the text that you're using to create the link. But you would just add that there under advisory title, and we hit OK. And now this particular word is a link. You can see in that tooltip the travel picture advisory title that I just added. And if I were to save this page and click that link, it would open up the picture in a new window. So that's creating a link. Now, if I were to double click that link that's already been created, that would open up the link dialog box again if you needed to edit it. Or now you've got the option to unlink it, which is the link next to the create a link, and unlinking a bit of content will just turn it back into regular text. The next item we have is that anchor that we previously mentioned. Sometimes you'll have a really long page of content and you'll need to allow people to kind of bounce around, maybe from the top to the bottom, or from the bottom back up to the top. So let's say, for instance, that we wanted to create a link to the top of this page, and we would just want to call it top. Let's see, call it top, and we're going to highlight that. We're going to hit our anchor link, and we'll give it an anchor name of top, and we'll hit OK. And now there's a little icon here that lets you know that an anchor has been created. And if we were to scroll to the bottom of the page, and now we want to create a link that basically says back to top, and we want to highlight that. And you didn't even need to create type the word top. I just put it there for the sake of example. But so we highlight that link and we scroll back up. And now we're going to create a link. And as the link type, we're going to use link to anchor in text. And now, because I have created an anchor, I have the option to choose it. So I get to choose my top anchor name that I've created, and I hit OK. Now, if someone were to click, if I were to save this page and someone were to scroll down to the bottom and click back to top, it would jump them back up to that point on the website, to that top area. Sometimes if your browser window is way bigger than the text, it doesn't show that noticeable of an effect. But if there's a lot of scrolling, it will scroll someone back up to the top or back up to that area of content. Next, we've got our image dialog box. This is another very important one. I'll just place my cursor anywhere where I want that image to appear, and I'll click the little house. And just like in the link dialog box, you can either type in a direct URL to the picture, or you can browse the server to upload an image, or to use an image that had previously been uploaded. So I'm going to browse the server, and I'm going to pull over my file browser so you can see it. And you'll see now that travel image that we had previously uploaded is still in our file list, so I'm going to select that as opposed to uploading it again. I'll just click on it, and then I can see it in my previewer, and then I'm going to hit Insert File. So now it will give us the URL to that particular item, and we can add some alternate text, man on mountain. This is just for search engines to let them know what this is a picture of. Since search engines can't see images, we have to tell them what this content is. It's good for search engine optimization. Gets more keywords on our page. Then we have our width and height. This is the default width and height of the image as it has already been uploaded. You can see a piece of it in the dialog box, and if you in this preview box, and if you scroll, you can see how large it actually is. And this preview also shows you how it would interact with the content. You see, since it is placed next to the content and isn't really aligned in any way, shape, or form, the content would just wrap next to it. You can change the width and height here. You can also change it once the image is actually on the picture or on the page, and we'll show you both ways. So if I were to change the width to some other number, it will automatically adjust the height for me to keep the picture proportionate. If you were to unclick this lock here, this lock ratio, then you would be able to stretch the image vertically or horizontally. We don't tend to recommend it, but if for some reason you needed to adjust an image, that's how you would allow it to be off with the proportions. Then you have your border. Whatever number you put here is the thickness in pixels of the border, and you can see in the preview how that affects the picture. Then we have horizontal space. Whatever number you put here is the amount of horizontal space in pixels, so that kind of, if you needed to give it some space away from text. Same thing with the V space, that's the vertical space. You can see in your preview that results in some extra spacing around the top and the bottom of the image. And then you've got your alignment. You can left align your image so that any text would float around to the left hand side of it. And you can see there, the preview is not always the most accurate thing because there's not a ton of space in the preview, but if you were to right align it, it would float to the right hand side of the text. So if we go ahead and hit OK, you can see how that results. And with the WYSIWYG, this isn't an exact representation of how your page would look because there might be some different styling. Your fonts are going to be different on the front end, and so you can't really get a 100% idea of how this will result in the final display. But you can see that your image is this size, it's floated to the right, and you've got a little border on it and some spacing. And now if you needed to adjust the dimensions of this image further, you could click on it, and then you'll get your tabs in the corners, and then you can just drag those tabs and change the sizing. And if you were to double click on the image, just like double clicking on the link, it would open your image properties box back up. Now you've got a link tab where you can add a URL, you can browse the server to get a link to another image, and just like in the links, you can set a target of blank or top, self, or parent. So that's very similar to when you're creating a link, so you can make this image a link. And then you've got your advanced tab. You can see here a lot of the ID and information like that is usually for styling from a coding perspective, but you also have an advisory title just like the link does. So if you're creating a link from this image, you could fill out the advisory title under the advanced properties. You could also, if you had specific style sheet classes such as border, things like that were particular to your template, you could add them under style sheet classes. And here the style, it just shows you all of the styles that kind of the code that goes into making those items that you clicked a reality. So that border has a width of 1 and it's solid, and you've given it margins and floated it and all those things. You don't need to edit this style, it's just there because it's automatically generated by the image. So we hit OK, and we like how our image is, and we'll leave it there so that we can see it on the front end once we're done making our changes. Next, you have your superscript and subscript. If you have characters that you need to superscript or subscript, you can see how that affects the character. Then you've got your source command. This is just to view the HTML. If for some reason you actually needed to edit the code of a page, you can turn on the source and you can turn it back off. You have insert horizontal line. If you needed to create a line break, you could do, or a horizontal line like that, you could do so, and there would be a line on the front end of your page. Next we have our cut. If you don't have anything highlighted, you won't be able to cut anything, but if you highlight it, then you can cut content. You can also copy or paste. A very important point when you're creating text in another word processing software such as Microsoft Word or Mac Office, any of those programs, you're going to want to either paste that content into your page as plain text or use the paste from Word icon. Either of those two will strip out all the additional characters and make sure that you're not pulling over any extra code in your text that might influence the way that your content displays. So if I had a bunch of text, I'll just go ahead and copy this. If I had a bunch of text that I needed to paste in from Microsoft Word and I click the paste from Word icon, it's going to open up a little dialog box and it's going to give me some instructions on how to paste my information. So I would just paste it on in there and hit OK, and then it's going to paste it directly wherever my cursor is for me. Next we've got show blocks. That just is to show you the block level content if you want to see where your paragraphs are, where your lists are, things like that. Next, we have our remove formatting. If you formatted a particular item and you can't seem to get certain styles to go away, you could always try the remove formatting, and it will do its best to try to remove any additional extraneous formatting from your content. Next, we have the insert special character. If you ever need to insert a registration mark, a copyright symbol, ampersands, things like that, M-dash, you can use the select special character. That's just to make sure that you won't get, sometimes someone tries to copy and paste these things directly from other documents and you get that weird little icon or character displayed. It's because the system can't handle that input. So you need to use the select special character so that it can actually put the hexadecimal code within your site. So, you could just insert it there. Then you've got your format dropdown. If you had an item, say for instance, if we wanted this particular bit of content to be a header, we could use our heading. We could use our format dropdown and make it, say, a heading 2 or heading 3. You've got heading 2 through 6, and the way that headings work is 2 is the most important on the page and 6 is the least important. A lot of people use headings just for size and for colors, but headings are really important to search engine optimization. They let search engines know how your content is hierarchically organized, so you want to make sure that your H2 is at the top, at the topmost heading, and then any sub-content within that is using an H3, H4, etc., etc. Then next you've got size drop-down if you need additional sizes. I really don't recommend using size when what you really need to do is use a heading to denote that something is an important header. It's a lot easier to deploy massive template changes if a lot of individual items aren't sized and styled individually. So it's just important to keep in mind that if you size something, a piece of content individually, and you need to change that later, you'll have to come in and change it in each particular node that it's been sized. And if in general you find that you're resizing a lot of different items, then maybe it's that we need to make a change to your template so that those things are universal, so that when a change is made to the site, it gets deployed universally and everything is consistent and nice. Next, we've got our styles drop down. And these are just some default styles that might be set up in your content management system. If you've got a particular color of blue or a particular color of red or certain styles, they might be added to this drop down so that you can use them. Maybe adding a button style, things like that would be in this styles drop down. Then we've got our table icon right here that allows you to insert a table. It's going to open up an overlay, and this is a very similar process to if you were creating a table in like a Microsoft Word or a content editing software. You let it know how many rows you need, how many columns you need. You can set the pixel width and the height of your table. If you want to use headers, you can set a header as your first row or your first column. You can give it borders. You can give it spacing and padding between your individual cells. And if you need to set, the alignment, you could, let's pretend we wanted to center it. So we hit OK. And now it's going to create a table based on the specifications that I just outlined. So if you click within each individual cell, you can see how the size of the cell changes based on the text that we put in the cells, and how the styling of the header is slightly different than the styling of the body of the table. And then when you right click on your table, you've got some options. You can delete it entirely. You can edit those table properties, and that'll pop up that table properties box again for you. You can also add columns before the one that your cursor is currently in. You can insert column after it. You can delete the column that your cursor is in. The same thing with rows. You can add a row before, you can add a row after, you can delete the row. So say, for instance, I just deleted a row there. And then you can actually edit individual cells. So you could, while I've got this one selected, if I wanted to merge right, I could merge it to the cell that's next to it and make one big table cell. So you have a lot of ability to play around with the tables, and it's really, really nice. Next, you can have your select all if you needed to select every item on the page. Then you could also do a find and replace. That'll open up a dialog box that's, a very standard find and replace box. You can insert a div container. Those are mostly used for styling, very specific coding type styling, but if you know how to use a div, you can insert a div there. You can also insert an iframe. Usually you might need to paste in an iframe if you're pasting something in from, say, YouTube or something like that, or having content from another website kind of live within this page. So you can give it your iframe properties, and you can set the width and the height and the alignment, very similar fields to other overlays that we've used. And then finally, we have our check spelling. That's going to run a spell checker for the entire page and tell you, where it comes up with certain issues. Or you've got the option to enable spell check as you type, and that is going to underline in red everything that the system perceives as being misspelled. So those are all the items in your WYSIWYG editor. Now, once you're satisfied with the content that you've edited on the page, obviously this is going to look pretty crazy, but you can scroll down to the bottom of your editing screen, and you can preview it. And you can see here that, again, it doesn't display everything exactly as it would appear on the front end, but you get a little bit of a preview to see how this content is going to be laid out. And then we could hit, scroll all the way down to the bottom and hit save. And now when our homepage refreshes, you can see the changes that we've made. We've got this numbered list with the sub list in there. We've got a horizontal rule, an image floated to the right-hand side, a header 2 tag, a little table with a bunch of gibberish, and if we hit back to the top, it's going to scroll us back up to the top of our page. So we've got that anchor text with the link that references it at the bottom of the page. So that is how to use your WYSIWYG editor. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in our next video.